Imagine walking into a building, you take off your shoes, your jacket, your bag, you put them into a bin, and they go through a machine. Next, you have to step through a metal detector. You put your arms above your head, and the machine begins to screech. You walk through, and the officers begin to pat you down. Your heart begins to race, even though you don't have anything worth confiscating. Schools with excessive security procedures, like being wanded and bag checked upon entering, create an atmosphere at the school that is not beneficial to the students' resources, future, and attitude at the school. Schools that utilize these policies for security do not consider how the students feel and what kind of atmosphere the procedures produce for them. To place yourself in the student's shoes, I'll be discussing a few reasons the security measures are not practical in a school setting. First, I will talk about security measures that are poorly implemented, making students feel policed rather than protected. Second, I will discuss the impracticality of metal detectors. And third, the school-to-prison pipeline and why these security measures further this crisis. And finally, the understanding of the importance of security for students and how faculty can better manage them without excessive procedures. To begin, the students' attitude towards these policies is going to be analyzed. Students that go to schools with ineffective security procedures like metal detectors, an excessive amount of student resource officers or SROs often feel they are being policed rather than protected. Kupchik, a professor of sociology and criminal justice at the University of Delaware in Newark, states that implementing poorly run security measures may make students feel like criminals or prisoners. A survey done with over 54,000 students in high school and middle school were asked about security measures in their school. The majority reported saying SROs and indoor cameras made them feel more vulnerable, while outdoor cameras actually gave them the opposite effect. In fact, the Texas School Safety Center states that students who feel less safe in school are more likely to not show up and to be disengaged while in the classroom. Supporting these students' fears on their safety, evidence suggests that these extra procedures are ineffective in protecting the lives of students. In fact, over the past decade, while mass shooting rates began to rise, billions of dollars were spent on funding school security as preventative measures. However, the violent rates continue to rise. Following the psychology of students, these procedures may actually be useless. Specifically, metal detectors are seen to be an impractical tool in a school setting when regarding the amount of money, resources, and time in the student psyche. According to the State Revenue and Financial Affairs Office, it is estimated that schools in South Carolina would need to spend about $14.4 million a year in order to install metal detectors in every public school, with an additional $98.3 to finance the security resource officers at every metal detector. For reference, the National Center for Education Statistics reports public schools using in 2016 on average $12,000 per student to maintain expenses like teacher salaries, benefits, supplies in the classroom, etc. With the amount needed to install metal detectors, students are missing out on so many other resources like new textbooks and technology that could benefit their education. A student attending a school in New York City reported issues regarding the immoderate amount of time spent going through the metal detectors every morning. She claimed the unreasonable hours were hard to get up in the morning. She had a hard time getting to school and in the classroom on time, because even though she got to school on time, the metal detector line took so long that she missed some of class. Besides the inconvenience and money associated with these procedures, the criminalization of students is another big factor. Evidence suggests that these excessive security measures actually fuel the school-to-prison pipeline. For those of you who don't know, the school-to-prison pipeline is a phenomenon that gives a direct pathway for students to go to in the criminal justice system. According to the American Civil Liberties Union, or ACLU, many of these children have learning disabilities or a history of abuse, neglect, or live in poverty. With students that have such complex backgrounds, the ACLU recommends giving these students extra care and attention, However, by increasing the reliance on school resource officers who have little to no training working with children, schools are getting opposite results. Disappointingly, SROs have a lot of evidence of using poor tactics to discipline children. An incident in Columbia, South Carolina had video footage that went viral because a school resource officer visited a classroom to help remove this 16-year-old girl who was causing disciplinary issues, and she still refused to leave, and he tried to remove her using physical force, and that resulted in her being thrown across the classroom. And still, with all that set in place, she was charged with a misdemeanor. While it is understandable to be paranoid about violent attacks on school due to the recent amount of mass shootings, these overused and abused security procedures just create an ineffective learning environment. However, if we used other methods of discipline and order, schools and students could benefit greatly. It is important to address the amount of violence seen today in schools and why security measures are taken. For instance, the Gun Violence Archive defines a mass shooting as an incident with at least 4 injured or killed. With this in mind, during the year 2019, there were 417 mass shootings in the US. Kukichik, who I mentioned earlier, also states that research over many years has shown a good way to maintain safety in schools is to create an inclusive school social climate. This way, students feel respected, included, and valued, leaving less room for negative thoughts and feelings that could lead to violence. The Texas School Safety Center reported students who have strong connections with their teacher being more likely to feel safe in the classroom. With all things considered, the infamous mass shootings in schools infecting every state in America, the scrambling for new security measures is highly understood. However, many new procedures being implemented have been seen to be inconclusive with a more secure and effective school. By discussing students' feelings towards school security, the cost and impracticality of metal detectors, the fueling of the school-to-prison pipeline, and other methods to ensure student safety, we can conclude that there are better and more cost-effective ways to help the decline of school violence. By improving the atmosphere in the classroom, students will benefit academically and create better relationships with their peers. My hope is that you too believe that the beginning of school violence can be lessened by giving students a better classroom environment.